All right, welcome to yet another fabulous Spatcast. This one's brought to you by the Linux distro community, and this is Zoo Crew Episode 6. And before we start, I'd like to share with you a few words from our founder, Voltam.
Hi, I'm Voltam, founder of the Linux distro community. The Linux distro community is a place for people to hang out and discuss Linux distros, software, and open source. The Linux distro community is a community funded by its members for its members. We are a friendly, welcoming community that encourages people who use Linux operating systems and software to share their passion and knowledge with other people. We believe that when people share information freely, everyone benefits. Our community is also a great place for people who have been using Windows and have been thinking of making the switch to a Linux operating system, a place where they can benefit from the sharing of knowledge. Linux operating systems and software developers have given us all the ability to choose from hundreds of free Linux-based operating systems and thousands of free programs. The least we can do is freely share our knowledge and share with others our experience whilst using this software. If you are using Windows right now and have had enough of all the viruses, spyware, malware, and are thinking, there must be a safer way to use the internet. Please consider using a free Linux operating system today. There are many to choose from. Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Pinguy OS, and Zorin OS are just some of the more popular, easy-to-use operating systems. And for the person who wants more of a challenge from their Linux experience, there is also Arch Linux. Millions of people only use their PC for internet, social networking, voice and video chat, and email. If they only knew that you can do all that on a Linux operating system safely and securely, that's where a community like ours comes in. Not only are we passionate about Linux operating systems and free software, we want other people to feel the freedom that we do when we use our computers. This is all part of a bigger picture, that as humans, we are rewarded by helping others. We were born to share and promote freedom. We'd love to see you become a part of the Linux distro community. You can voice chat with us on Mumble or text chat with us in IRC. Head over to linuxdistrocommunity.com for details. Join in today in the sharing of knowledge and the freedom that a Linux operating system gives people. Thank you.
All right. Well, today's topic is going to be a viewer's choice discussion. And prior to starting the show here, I selected a panel of guests. And before we start on the different topics that we're going to have, each guest on my show has picked out a topic that we're going to briefly discuss. And so let me first introduce everybody that we have on our show. From Australia, we have Os Zorin. We have C. Smith from Oregon. We have Edward from England. We have Oscalit from Ireland. I'm from the United States here in sunny Florida. And then Setkeh is also from Australia. Welcome, everybody. And let's go ahead and we'll start with our first topic. C. Smith wanted to talk about docks. And when I'm mentioning docks, there are many different kinds of docks you can choose from for quick launching your programs. And some of them are some of them that you can use are like the Avant window navigator. There is Docky. There is Cairo and a few others. Why don't you start us off there, Mr. Smith?
Yeah. I personally do find mostly one that fits me perfectly almost. Customization, always a plus.
Okay, now earlier you were mentioning that you were using Avant Window Navigator and Cairo Dock and that sort of thing. Which one do you prefer out of those in terms of customization and usability?
I never said I used Avant Window Manager and Cairo Dock at the same time because honestly that would be too much clutter. It's GNOME and Cairo Dock that I use in tandem.
Zorin, do you use any docks?
I use the Avant Window Navigator. I've tried Cairo Dock from time to time, but I've just had headache after headache with it. But, for usability and straightforwardness, Avant Window Navigator for the win, mate.
Edward?
I've tried Avant, Docky, and Cairo just seems to be one of those docks that should be in something like Ultimate Edition for all the eye candy. I think Docky is probably one of your best options as it's more supported and you can get scripts for it and everything else.
Oscalit?
I haven't really used docs in the past. However, not the ones you mentioned anyway. However, in GNOME Shell, I did have a doc put in. It was just an extension from the website, the extension GNOME extensions.gnome or whatever it's called. And I've never ever really used. I've never used ones that you can customize, if you know what I mean. I personally don't like docs. It reminds me too much of a Mac-like interface, and that's not something I like.
Setkeh, do you use any docs?
I have previously used docks, and I use them on and off. It depends on how I'm feeling when I configure my Arch install, I suppose. I just moved away from Liquid Lemma after a few really major issues and with graphics drivers and stuff like that. So I use CairoDock. CairoDock is a real dock if you have a nice high-end machine with a good graphics card that supports the compositing. But I can't really say much about any other dock. I really only ever use Cairo.
Okay, and you know what? I've tried a number of docks myself. I've tried Docky. When I made my first transition to Linux, and I was running Linux Mint, I actually was using CairoDock myself. And I did find it a little bit hard to configure to my liking, and then I eventually moved on to Avant Window Navigator, and I actually found the Avant Window Navigator to be really powerful, and I also loved all the plugins that it comes with, and that is the dock that I'm currently using today. And the nice thing I liked about it was I could easily put my I used Cardapio for my menu, which is highly customizable. And then, of course, you know, it has all these little applets that you can put in there, some of them for fun. And so I really, out of all of them, I like the Avant Window Navigator because it gives you so many choices and different ways that you can display your, you know, your applications and that sort of thing right on the dock. You can even have an icon that you can press that allows you to, you know, open it up and, you know, have other icons within that. And I saw a similar feature in Liquid Lemma that does the same thing, but that uses Cairo, and so that was something I was considering looking into at one point, but the thing is, you know, I've been using AWN for quite a while now, and I just can't see myself switching to something else. But there are a lot of great choices for docks out there, and just doing a simple Google search for Linux docks will give you a listing of the many choices that are available to you, and a lot of them are very easy to customize. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to Edward's suggestion. He wanted to talk about VirtualBox and the new Ubuntu 12.04. Now, he had a video that he put up earlier today or yesterday. I'm not sure. I know it was recently that he put up a new video, and he explained that he was having some difficulty with this. Now, it's my understanding that you actually had a chance to speak with Mr. Pope today, and he was trying to help you resolve some issues with the VirtualBox that is in the Ubuntu Software Center. Were you able to find any resolution on that? And if so, what steps did you have to take to get that problem fixed?
Well, first of all, I recommend anyone who's on 12.04 Beta 2 not to bother with VirtualBox unless you're going to try and upgrade your kernel. I mean, I tried upgrading my kernel to 3.4. It didn't come up under grub menu, so it was only sticking on 3.2. That's something that Poppy suggested doing. I reinstalled it, installed it from the website like you suggested, and it still did the same issue with the kernel crashing. My only solution was to get rid of it and put on Ping iOS instead. Basically just wait until they've sorted this issue out. I might just install the same OS on a virtual machine and see if that happens, and then I don't have to worry about rebooting and reinstalling my OS all over again if I keep getting this problem. Because I need VirtualBox to basically do all my videos on YouTube to do like what you do. So I think it's just an issue with the kernel.
Exactly. I have come to rely on VirtualBox myself because I do all of my reviews and everything like that. And also, there are some Windows programs I just can't get working in Wine, and I really don't feel the need to dual boot into my Windows side just to, you know, run a simple little program. It's going to take 2 or 3 minutes to, you know, just complete and run an application. Now, interestingly enough, I had a conversation with Mr. Pope earlier today. He couldn't make it tonight for this discussion. However, he did state that he is running Ubuntu 12.04 and he is running VirtualBox without any issues. Soren, we'll start with you. Are you running VirtualBox for any applications? Have you tried the new Ubuntu 12.04, and are you experiencing any issues with that?
Not at this moment in time, mate. I'm not actually using Ubuntu 12.04. Thus, I'm willing to sort of have a good look at it in the beta stage at the moment, beta 2, from what I understand. That'll be on the lineup to download very soon, and I'll have a play with that. On a VirtualBox note, yes, I am a VirtualBox freak, as they say. I use VirtualBox basically for testing out different distributions and just having a play with and all that sort of stuff. But yes, I do use VirtualBox on a daily basis. And we'll be hopefully using VirtualBox for an upcoming channel release very soon. I'm hoping to start my own channel very soon in regards to lightweight distributions of Linux. And yeah, of course, I'll be using VirtualBox as a virtualization mechanism to do my videos. Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, we had a nice discussion yesterday, Ossorin, that you've got several years of experience with Linux, and so this is wonderful that you have decided that you would like to start your own channel and contribute to the community. And I eagerly await to see what kind of content you're going to be putting out, and I'll definitely link to your channel once you get a channel started, so that people can go into your channel and have a look at your content. Okay, C. Smith, you're next. Do you use VirtualBox? Are you using Ubuntu 12.04, or are you having any issues with VirtualBox?
Yes, I'm using VirtualBox on 12.04. I don't use it as much as some do. I honestly haven't had any problem with VirtualBox yet that I can say.
Okay, Oscalet.
Yes, VirtualBox is something that I would use every day. I can see why people who use YouTube and do reviews of distros use it every single day. The main reason why I use VirtualBox is because of Windows applications. As you Spatry yourself, I have some Windows applications I cannot live without, so I do need VirtualBox. I did actually notice with 12.04, I had problems with the kernel. I believe that might be a fault on Canonical itself, because I am somebody who compiles their own kernel. As soon as a kernel mainstream and upstream comes out, I download it straight away and compile it myself. And the latest 3.x series of kernels, I've had no issues with VirtualBox at all. So I believe it's something on Canonical side and not the Linux kernel side itself.
All right, and before I pass this on to our resident Linux expert that we have in the house here, GTO mentioned that he had 12.04 in VirtualBox, and it worked great, except for the apt-get upgrade froze on him and didn't go through. But he put it in bare metal, and it works great. Now, he wasn't clear enough to define whether or not he was actually running 12.04 inside a VirtualBox, or whether or not he was actually running 12.04 on regular hardware and then trying to run another operating system from within that. Setkeh, what is your view on this?
Okay, so I've tried 12.04. I've not actually ever installed it on live hardware, so I've not used VirtualBox inside 12.04. But as everyone knows, I use VirtualBox quite a lot. And as far as kernel problems with VirtualBox goes, I have to agree with Oscalet. It's more than likely a fault on Canonical's part, because every time I see an Ubuntu kernel or a kernel compiled for Ubuntu, there is always a lot of bloat or a lot of things cut out that probably shouldn't have been cut out, and they compile it in such a weird way that I've always had problems with the Ubuntu kernel. Generally, if I was to, when I used to use Ubuntu, I used to strip the kernel out and build my own from source, because, like I say, I've always had problems with it. So as far as suggestions for VirtualBox inside 12.04 is the only thing I can think of off the top of my head is build the drivers manually, and if that doesn't work, then it might be time to try and build your own kernel. If you're not comfortable with that, then I'm sorry, you're going to have to go back to an earlier release, or go back to the LTS release.
Okay, now GTO went on to say that he was installing 12.04 in VirtualBox on a laptop that's running 10.04, and that's where he experienced that issue. Now, remember, folks, the 12.04 release that's out right now is still in beta, and I'm confident they are working all the bugs out of that right now. They are still sending updates and that sort of thing to the system, and I'm confident they will have a well-polished system by the time it's ready for release date. Okay, now let's go ahead and move on to our next topic, and this one comes from Oscalet. He wanted to talk to us about package management. That is a big issue for a number of Linux distributions that are out there, and for some people it can actually affect your decision as to which distribution you will choose. For instance, Ubuntu uses apt. Fedora uses YAST, or RPM package management. the Ubuntu uses the deb package management, I meant to say, or Debian. And then, of course, Arch uses Pacman. And then you have Portage with Gentoo. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and get us started off on that, Oscalit?
I am somebody who's had a lot of experience with Linux. I have hopped from distro to distro and henceforth have used a lot of package management systems. I started off, of course, with Ubuntu as a beginner, and I used apt-get. Apt-get is a very, very useful tool, as in the fact that it has PPAs where I can go in and put my own software in it as well. So instead of just using the default mirrors, I also have the option to opt in to other mirrors. With Yast and the likes of CentOS is the only distro I've really used Yum with. I would say I don't see as much versatility and the option to put in your own mirror lists. Of course you can, but apt-get makes it a lot easier. And the next ones I've used, of course, are more advanced, which are the likes of Pacman and Emerge, which is Portage. These two are the best package management systems that, well, at least for me personally, due to the fact that, first off, they don't install more dependencies than what they need. The likes of apt-get and Debian installs so many dependencies that it says it needs, when in fact the program only needs about 2 dependencies. That's why I really apt. Yum does the same, so I don't like that. And Pacman and Emerge just give me everything I need, and that's personally why I use different package management systems. As a programmer, I also would prefer Pacman over the likes of .deb and .rpm, because compiling to a .deb and a .rpm is extremely difficult for anyone who's doesn't have experience in programming. If you go and try and compile to a .deb, good luck to you.
All right, and we're getting some comments in IRC already. We've got Pacman for the win. I'm going to share my view on that in a moment, but first, Zoran, what is your experience with package managers? Which ones do you like?
My experience with package managers, mate, on a user point of view. I've in the past, when I first started out with Linux, I started out with Ubuntu way back, and I had good experiences with the apt-gets and all that sort of stuff as well. But from distro to distro, to be honest with you, as they do all use different package management systems, and also depends upon the distro as to what base they're using. I've always liked apt-get, to be personally honest with you. Pacman I've had some experience with, and also a couple other package management systems. But yeah, apt-get, and I'd say Pacman for the win.
C. Smith.
Yes, I've tried several different distros, but most of them centralize around apt-get. I have also tried Aptitude, but the one time I tried it broke my system. Now, one thing I think people would not realize is that PC Linux OS uses RPM packages, but it uses apt-get to get them.
Can you repeat? It uses apt-get to get RPM packages. That's like taking... It's insanity in my opinion anyway. Yast it's built for RPMs. I wonder why they actually do that. Seems a bit stupid at least that's my view on it anyway.
What they're on about is pretty much Fedora with RPM. My main OSs have been Ubuntu based, so I'm so used to deb files, so it's been apt-get install, apt-get update and all that sort of stuff, and they really have built a really solid package management with Aptitude and stuff. And yeah, Pacman is really becoming really well built and stuff, and there's like Yowit as well for like yet another user repository, so people can download from the AUR. And it's just basically the community is making it stronger and stronger as the days go by.
Alright, so yes, Debian uses... Debian-based distros use apt-get. I'm not a fan of apt-get. I find it very ugly. Fedora uses RPM, Yum, Yast. Kind of hackish, but I kind of like it. It's not too bad. But I'm going to go ahead and say Pacman for the win, of course. Package compression, speed, everything like that is just awesome.
Obviously, I've spent more time with Ubuntu or Debian-based operating systems. I really like the deb packages. They're really easy to install, especially for the newcomer, that sort of thing. A lot of your newcomers are just going to download a deb package from a website rather than try and issue commands to a terminal. But once I did switch into Arch and I learned how easy Pacman is to use, I have to agree. Pacman Pacman is magnificent. It handles all of your dependencies quite well. And then, of course, Yourt was mentioned, and that is a wonderful tool for downloading packages from the AUR. Basically, these are little package builds that you're downloading, and then what they're doing is telling it where to download these tarballs, and it compiles everything for you on the fly. And so literally it makes it a lot easier for managing your packages and that sort of thing. I have to agree. Pac-Man for the win. C. Smith, you're next.
Yes, I just have one thing to add. There is a package called TGZ.
Pacman uses its own, it has its own tar files per se. It's a .pack.tgz file. So it's basically a source file that contains a what is it again? It's a PJK build file, which basically in the PJK build file, it lists all the dependencies and it lists bash commands to compile it. Well, if you're using Yourt, it will list the commands to compile it. Pacman, of course, has packages that are already compiled. I just want to mention the alternative to package management systems, which is downloading tar files, the source files, and doing it all by yourself, which I believe, anyway, is the superior way of doing things. That is just my view. I like having total control over everything. What you may not realize is whenever you're using the likes of a package management system, it is downloading files that are already pre-compiled. If you compile your own software, it is built specifically for your machine, so it is optimized to your hardware.
Essentially, that's what Yourt does on for Arch users, because it is downloading those tarballs for you and compiling them for you without you having to actually go in and issue the commands. It is not 100% perfect. Sometimes I have to go in and edit the dependencies that the package build requires, or I might have to do a little bit of meddling to get some of them to work. But usually, if you're downloading a package that is kept up to date and has a maintainer assigned to it, you can get good results with using Yourt and downloading and installing packages.
I would totally agree with you, Spatry. Yourt is an improvement on Gentoo's Emerge. Emerge has become very, very old now, and Yourt is the future for the likes of compiling from source. Of course, as you know, Spatry, a couple of weeks ago when I was talking to you, I was like, I'll never use Arch, but I've actually worked myself around to it now because of the fact of Yourt. Yourt is a brilliant tool. Yourt is the future for anyone who likes to compile their own software. It does it out of the box. There's no issuing commands. It's just type in Yourt and the program you want, and that's it done. There's no having to go and configure it, make install. It just does it for you, which is brilliant.
Setkeh.
Yeah, just to expand on the Yourt, it's not just Yourt that makes and breaks Arch. I mean, like, there's heaps of AUR helpers out there, like Packer and I can't even remember them all. But the AUR itself is what makes Arch. It really is. And ABS. ABS is definitely another handy tool that really makes Arch what it is, because you don't have to go in and build packages manually doing ./configure or make install. You can just download the source code, use ABS to build it if it's not in the AUR, or you can write your own PKG build and submit it to the AUR. The only thing, I mean, I personally like Packer, but I also really like Yourt as well. And the only thing that I could think that's kind of tips me towards Yourt as a better AUR helper is it has a question, and it asks you what editor you want to use when it asks you, do you want to edit the PKG build? And Packer doesn't have that. You actually have to go in and manually find the line that has Vi on it and change that line to Nano to be able to use something else, or Vim or whatever else. And that's the only thing that grabs me when I use Packer.
Edward.
Right, a lot of people on IRC have been saying, why don't they have one package management system? And I was speaking to someone about a month ago who asked the same question and did a video on YouTube. The reason why they don't have just like I want it or whatever, an easy way to get it through all different types of Linux, like through Arch, through Debian, through everything else, is because each version of Linux, like Debian and Arch, want to do things their own way. They want to compile things the way they want it, and they don't want to stick to one person's way of doing things. I hope that answered a lot of people's questions.
centralizing the control of one package manager would be insane. I wouldn't like to do it if I was in charge of it, of one single package manager system that was used for millions and millions and millions of users. I would probably end up killing myself. So that is the reason why, is the fact that not one team of people can manage that. You need multiple teams of people managing their own separate projects. That's the only way to drive people not going bloody insane.
And plus the server load as well would slow down the downloads of the packages, and it wouldn't be a very good experience in downloading all the packages from one massive centralized package manager.
Okay, it looks like a lot of people on IRC are also saying that they really like Pac-Man. So it looks like we've got a winner with Pac-Man. But the thing is, all of the other package managers do their jobs and do them well in their own right. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. And Setkeh has this topic today, and he is going to talk about Bitcoins. I saw him having a discussion and giving a tutorial earlier on IRC. Tell us a little bit about Bitcoins.
I'm only new to this as well, so I don't know how much I can go into it, but about 5-6 days ago I discovered Bitcoin, and basically what Bitcoin is it's a cryptocurrency, meaning it's not a real currency. It's basically you trade it for goods and services, although there are people out there that will pay you real money for your Bitcoins. So you can say you go out and you build a computer for someone. They say, do you accept Bitcoins? You say yes. You know, you build the computer, they give you 50 Bitcoins or something like that. You can then take those 50 Bitcoins and to somewhere like, I think it's Mount Gox or something like that, and they buy, you put up a trade, and then someone will look at that trade and they can buy the Bitcoins off you. It's peer-to-peer, so there's no middleman in the whole operation like a bank, say, or PayPal or anything like that. Well, technically there is a middleman, there's many middlemen, but they don't see any of that stuff. Everything gets synced live, kind of like BitTorrent. You know, the packages, the information isn't stored in one spot. It's shared throughout the whole network. And what that does is it helps us with speed. Everything goes fast. I think my last payment processed in under 2 minutes with the network. And there's also, well, the other good thing about Bitcoin is you can actually mine the coins yourself. Now, the mining itself isn't easy. It's probably one of the harder things to do instead of coming up with something to, you know, trade for the Bitcoins. Because you need a very high-end computer, or ideally a cluster of high-end computers with special software that either you solo mine, which means you solve the blocks yourself, and each block is worth 50 Bitcoins when you solve it. And when you're trying to solve these blocks, you're trying to use, you're using your GPU or your CPU. Ideally, you'd like to use your GPU because it's less power intensive on the system, and the GPU can process data a lot faster than your CPU can. The other type of mining besides solo mining is pool mining, which is where a group of people are working on the same block that you are to speed the process up. And what this does is it gives you a more constant payout. Because the mining is luck-based, you have a much better chance when there's 300, 400, 500 people working on a block than when you just have one person. And there's tons and tons of pools out there to join. Some with fees, some without fees, some accept donations and whatnot. So you'd have to shop around for the best pool. In my opinion, that's ozcoin.in, because they're donation based and they're a great bunch of guys, and they have some really good tools. I think I've covered everything. If not, shout at me in IRC.
All right, well, this is what caught my eye in the conversation that you were having, was the fact that now you are taking hardware like your GPU or graphics processor, and now you're assigning processing tasks to this. This caught my eye, and I was like, wow, this is something hot, because now, if you're using your graphics processor unit to mine for bitcoins or, solve hashes to make money, it stands to reason that you would be able to also use that same graphics processing unit to do something else, like possibly video rendering. Somebody with a single core processor like me would love to be able to tap into that power, because I have a powerful graphics processing unit built into my laptop, and I think that would be a wonderful thing to do. So that's something I'm definitely going to be researching into, and Edward wants to go next on this one, so why don't I pass the microphone over to you?
I was just going to mention, why don't we do like a video on YouTube, all those who have got YouTube channels, learn about it, and then just upload some videos on YouTube of explaining all the how-tos and stuff, so it gets the word out a bit more. Because not everyone might just watch this video or listen to this podcast all the way up to what we're at now, which is like 35 minutes, and listen to the bit about Bitcoin. We should put a video title up on YouTube about it, and then people can search it, and we can put it on our Facebooks or whatever and get the word out.
Very interesting point. Oscalit.
I'd just like to state the fact that Bitcoins, as they are, they're not an old form, or they're not a new sort of shit. They're not very new. They have been around since 2009, I believe. So there is no need to show how-to videos for it. What Spatry is really interested in is the mining of Bitcoins, is what I'm interested in as well, is utilizing the GPU. Bitcoins are brilliant. It's I'm quoting here, free form of income. However, the whole thing here is utilizing your GPU, which is quite amazing in my opinion.
Now, Root on IRC goes on to say that we would need to have a fast enough machine to offset the cost of electricity, and then you would need to pay off the cost of the GPUs as well. Does anybody else have any other views on this before we move on? Setkeh.
Yes, and what Root is saying is exactly correct, because... And this is the reason why I say GPU mining is generally better, because your GPU doesn't suck any more power than what it's given by the PCI slot. Whereas CPUs, they can fluctuate in their power consumption. Plus, having a machine on all the time generally isn't ideal. So at the moment, I'm hashing things at around about 20 mega hashes a second, and that translates into me solving a block solo about 7 years. And a lot of the guys I've been speaking to over the last few days while I've been learning about this, they've been doing this for quite some time, and they've got dedicated rigs for it, and they're hashing well into the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 giga hashes per second. You have to be able to hash at those sorts of speeds to be able to make this profitable, to offset your power. And it usually requires a very specifically built machine. And you can read up a lot more about these specifically built machines on the Bitcoin website, which is bitcoin.org.
Very interesting food for thought. So make sure you guys have a really powerful machine if you want to make some money with this. Let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. And today, Os Zorin would like to talk about Conky. Start us off.
Well, mate, I'm really new to Conky over the last sort of week and a half. I've just got an older machine I've been mucking around with here. It's got Crunchbang on it. And, just my experiences with Conky, configuring it and customizing it to my liking. I get to the point now where I'm actually trying to run at least 3 or 4 instances of Conky at the same time. I followed instructions via the Crunchbang wiki on their website in regards to official start of how to run more than 3 instances of Conky, or 3 instances of Conky as is. And I ran into a few problems last night following instructions on that website, and I just find it quite frustrating to the point where, in regards to that part to do with Conky, where you have to have 3 separate Conky scripts in order to run those 3 instances. Just in my general opinion, just with the default Conky RC file itself, if the general user had the ability to just run those 3 separate Conky scripts in the one script, coming from a newbie point of view, would make life a lot more easier. But yeah, Conky has its quirks, has its problems, but yeah, it's like any other program or something out there like that. Over time it'll get better. But yeah, that's just my problem that I've had with Conky so far. General use of Conky itself, I love its customizability. Some of the screenshots that I've actually seen of people's desktops on Crunchbang and other websites, and just Conky users in general, is just absolutely brilliant. But yeah, from what I've heard and from what I've experienced myself with using an older machine with Conky, power consumption-wise has certainly gone up.
Now, OptiChip has gone on to say that Conky is nice, but it is resource-intensive, not recommended for the standard user with basic hardware. So laptop users out there, if you're going to run Conky, it is going to chew up your battery power. C. Smith, you're next.
Yes, all I have to say is Conky really does look nice, and I can't say I really run my computer on battery too much, which I should.
Edward.
Yeah, Conky's nice and all, but obviously it does have to use a bit of CPU to run it, because it is displaying pretty much interval updates of your system. They were saying basically that basic hardware could run a dozen Conkys, but it depends how much CPU and RAM you've got. I mean, most computers nowadays come with at least 1.5 GHz processor, so you should easily be able to run Conky.
Oscar Lit.
I've never really used Conky in the past, but talking to Alan Pope a while back, he was saying that it's quite power intensive, as it updates your screen every millisecond basically. So that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't use it. I mean, it looks nice, but personally, I prefer things to work smoothly. I don't like having anything that's a resource hog in any way whatsoever, whether it's RAM, processor, or power.
Setkeh.
I would probably have to disagree with most of the resource-intensive stuff. On my laptop, I have a 1.6 gigahertz dual-core with 4 gig of RAM, and I have 11 Conkys on the desktop. I also have 3 Conkys running on my workstation, which is significantly more powerful, but I haven't finished configuring the desktop. But the other thing with Conky is it's so highly extensible. If you do find it's starting to hog your resources a bit much, you can always change it so that it doesn't update every second or every millisecond. You can set that to every 10 seconds or every 5 minutes if you wanted to. Yes, I am a bit of a Conky addict. I love my information. So yeah, when you use Conky and things that do take processing time and RAM time and stuff like that, you need to be smart about how you're setting those up.
Okay, my turn, and this takes us right back to the Avant window navigator. I am not using Conky, mostly because, yeah, I have used Conky, and I have sat down and customized it and that sort of thing, and pretty much it is editing a text file and tweaking here and there, save the file, and then, of course, the changes take place immediately and that sort of thing. It reminds me of Rainlander when I was running Windows, but Rainlander obviously had a nice graphical user interface that you could tweak it and configure it, and I preferred that. And Conky would probably be something I would use a little bit more if I could graphically tweak it rather than sitting there mucking about in a text file. But to each their own. But the thing is, all of the features that Conky has, I have built into Avant Window Navigator. I've got a network monitor. I've got a CPU monitor. And pretty much that's all I need. I've got a little clock on my little Avant Window Navigator as well. So really, I don't have a need for it. And basically, I'm a minimalist desktop. I have no icons on my desktop. I like all of my icons in one little spot where I can easily get to them and that sort of thing. And while Conky is great for many people, especially you, Setkeh, if you have 11 instances of it running, I can understand why you would have to set that up to work at updating your screen every 10-second intervals. Very interesting. Staz also mentioned that he thinks that Conky works great on Archbang. I think Oscalet wanted to go next.
Yeah, I just want to put across the fact that there is other alternatives to Conky, Avant Windows Manager, as you have said. It is all up to personal choices. And also, Spatry, there is a graphical tool you can use to edit Conky, just so you know that.
Yes, Ratatouille just mentioned that on IRC, that you can go to conkygui.sourceforge.net, and you can download a copy of that. That's something I may look into eventually, maybe when I'm ready to start running Ubuntu. Okay, any final thoughts on Conky before we move on to our final topic?
Yes, I just had a couple things that within ChiroDoc there's even stuff with that do what Conky does. And if you go to a site called DeviantArt, you can get pre-customized sets of Conky that actually do look pretty nice.
Soren.
Yes, just a big thank you. I really appreciate, the resource of information I'm actually getting in regards to, possible alternatives plus a GUI tool in order to edit Conky itself. It's been a great show, and hopefully, either this afternoon or tonight, I'll be able to figure out my ongoing brick wall hits with Conky and be able to get somewhere.
Also, something else I'd like to point out, you can also go on GNOME Look or any of the look.org sites, and there are Conky configs that you can download. But personally, I've seen a lot of those Conky configs, and the way I have my screen resolution set up, I want something that I can have that is small, compact, tiny, gives me the information I want. But the way I have everything set up on my Avant window navigator is more than satisfactory for that need. But those options are available to you. Okay, and let's go ahead and move on to our final topic. And everybody knows that I am a multimedia enthusiast, so I figured I'd take a little bit of time to talk about that today on the show. And a lot of people on my panel will agree that multimedia really is not a strong point in Linux, but for those of you who have been watching my show, you'll see that I have been putting out high-definition video, so Linux is capable. You can do multimedia productions, probably not as easily as you can on Windows, but as you get used to the Linux options that are available to you and unlock the power of those programs, you actually find that you can easily put together some good multimedia presentations. And so let's go ahead and we'll start with you, Soren, and we'll go down the line, and then I'll add a final thought.
No worries, Spatry. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Linux has its its possibilities with multimedia. Doing multimedia productions or whatever else like that, and also multimedia software, or in general, in certain package managers to do with different distributions. Coming from a multimedia background myself, both commercial radio and also radio production, and also working on call as a radio station technician. With the radio production side, our local community radio station here in town at the moment, we're actually we rely on Linux day in and day out in our on-air studio through to our production studio. And also just our general computers in general up at the studio. We use Audacity with all the plugins available that we can try and get for Audacity at the moment on our system up there. And we've been now using Audacity with Linux now for just over a number of months now, and we couldn't be happier. Audacity-wise, with audio production, with radio and audio production in general, multi-track recording and editing, everything just runs flawlessly and so smooth. Coming from an audio perspective, perfect.
C. Smith.
Yes, I honestly can't say I have much experience in video editing, but Linux does have a strong point in playing back multimedia. But almost always with the GUI tool, you're going to find CLI is more versatile. CLI being command line interface.
Edward.
Yeah, there's lots of packages and software and everything else for Linux, and there's even plenty of distributions out there for multimedia people. There's like Dream Studio, and there's all sorts. It's basically about finding what you need it for, what type of production you're looking at, whether you're looking at video editing. I know I helped someone do find a distribution who was wanting to do it for like video editing and stuff, and there's loads of different programs out there. It's just knowing how to get them and how to use them, basically, to your full advantage.
Oscar Lit?
I am personally a professional photographer. That is my day job. So, of course, I use Adobe Photoshop. However, in saying that, I also use GIMP on a daily basis. I use Photoshop for professional purposes and GIMP for daily needs. I can do everything I can do in Photoshop in GIMP. However, I just prefer to do it in Photoshop because Photoshop makes it a little bit more easier. I find with GIMP I have to go through a few more settings. However, it is there. I can do it. And that's one really good thing within multimedia within Linux is the GIMP. It is a brilliant image program. You can do everything you can do in there. It's brilliant. However, that is only one point of multimedia. There is video, 2D animation, 3D animation, and so many more. Personally, I haven't found anything in the Linux open source community that is good enough for 2D animation, 3D animation, or video editing. Kdenlive is pretty good. However, for a non-linear video editor, it's not the best. It's good for simple splicing and simple transitions. However, if you want to go into a little bit more complicated things, it's not that good. Blender for 3D animation is actually quite good. I believe it has a lot of potential in there. However, you have to think about it on the lines of the professional alternative costs something around the lines of $2,000 US, whereas Blender is free. So you have to expect things to not be as good, if you get what I'm saying. There is potential though for every single piece of software that the open source community has developed, and it's just a case of getting some more money to drive it further.
Let me put a little rabbit in your ear, Oscar Lit. The next version of the GIMP is actually going to have everything in a single user interface. So you will be able to easily find command. You'll be able to easily find those commands and everything. It'll be laid out like Photoshop. You can set it up to work that way, although it will come up with its default setup. But you can switch it over to make it look and behave like Photoshop, which is welcome. Setkeh, you're next.
As far as video editing goes, I personally recommend Kdenlive. I've had some really good experiences with it. And OpenShot as well. If you can't get Kdenlive to work, OpenShot is another very good one. And for 3D rendering, I use Blender, of course. That's how I made all my show menus and things like that. So Blender is very powerful, and it's awesome because it's open source. And if you're not sure what Blender is, I suggest you go and check out some of the open source movies that have been made with Blender, and they're all on the Blender website. And one thing with Kdenlive, though, I have had a problem with is when I'm rendering a high-definition video, at the very end of the render, it'll tell me that my encoder is crashed. If it happens right at the end of the video, from experience, or from my experience anyway, the video should be fine, because every time I render a video in Kdenlive, it'll tell me it's crashed, but the video always turns out perfectly fine, so that's just a quick pro tip.
Okay, and my turn. Now, I admit, yes, Linux is weak in some areas where it comes to multimedia authoring. Anytime you see graphics appearing on the screen, I'm actually using a Windows program under Wine. I use Macromedia Fireworks to do all my graphics because I just like the layout and all the tools and everything. But yes, I have used the GIMP as well. It's just that I find it takes me twice as long to do the same graphics and that sort of thing. Now, I have used Sony Vegas in Windows for many years, and since switching over to Linux, I've given Kdenlive a shot. And I have found that every time I play with that program, I'm uncovering new functions that I was not aware that it would do. And I could literally do some precision video editing down to 1/100th of a second. You know, so I really like that feature. And then not only that, it has a lot of really good effects that you can use with it. You know, I figured out how to get the rubber bands working so I can adjust audio and that sort of thing, just like I did in Sony Vegas. And so pretty much this tool has everything that Sony Vegas would do for me. It just took me a while to figure out where they all are. And now I find myself using Sony Vegas less and less because I've been able to tap into the power of this. And yes, I have run into issues with rendering in Kdenlive. Live. But the beauty of this is because your file that you're saving is actually a form of XML and it uses Melt, you can take your Kdenlive save files and you can pull them into OpenShot and you can render them from there and use one of their presets. The advantage of using this is great if you are using a single core computer like myself. If you're using a multi-core computer, you want to render from Kdenlive because their renderer supports multi-threaded encoding, whereas OpenShot does not. But I found that between using those two video editing programs, I've been able to get a good workflow, and I'm really pleased with what the Linux community is putting out. Also, because I am running Arch, I am always getting the latest versions of the software that I can try them out, and if there's something wrong with it, I can always contribute, file bug fixes and that sort of thing. But for the most part, I think the community is doing a wonderful job. And then, of course, we have Audacity. I use that for all of my audio editing. Somebody had mentioned that as well. And, I used Adobe Audition for years, and now Audacity has gotten to a point where I have actually been able to replace Adobe Audition, and now I'm strictly using Audacity. I have not used Cinelera. That was brought up on IRC. That is your optical compositing software for Linux. If there were a little bit more tutorials and that sort of thing, eventually I might get into that one, but I really didn't feel the need to hit a learning curve on that one. So yes, Linux has a long way to go in terms of multimedia, but watch out! May 28th is coming up, and that means the new Lightworks will be coming out. I don't know if they're going to have a Linux version for it yet, but they are planning on a final release, and they are planning on a release for Mac and GNU Linux. So, and that video editor is supposed to be the video editor to kill all video editors out there. So definitely something that you should keep your eyes out for. C. Smith, you're next.
Yes, I just had to add that if anyone here who has seen Avatar, that was made purely with Ubuntu with KDE on it.
Oscalet.
You were talking earlier about Lightworks, and I just want to give it another big, massive oomph that Spatry has given it. Lightworks seems to me that it's going to beat everything. I had a quick look at their website, and it looks like the sleekest design I've ever seen in my life, and I cannot wait to try that thing out because it looks so fresh and so clean. So everyone, if you're into video editing, Lightworks seems like the thing for you. It looks amazing.
Definitely, and there is a free version, and there will be a paid support version where you can pay for $60 a year, and to get the professional version, I think the only differences is the level of support that you will be getting with it. But I wouldn't be surprised once the free version releases, you're going to see a plethora of tutorials coming up on YouTube. I know when I start running it, I'm going to be showing off how to do things on YouTube as well, because that's something that's right up my alley. I have a number of video and audio editing tutorials that are up on my site. There will be a link to Lightworks in the show notes. I saw somebody asked. Okay, good. Somebody already posted up a link there. And gentlemen, we have run out of time. This has been a wonderful conversation. I'd like to thank Soren, C. Smith, Edward, Oscalet, Setkeh for joining me today. And we have these conversations every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will have links in the show notes for all of these show hosts that are present. They all have wonderful shows that are well worth your time, so definitely visit their channels and check out their content. I know I haven't been, with my work schedule, my volunteer work, and everything else that I have going on in my life, I haven't been able to put up as many videos as I would like to. So you definitely have fresh content always coming in. It's one reason why I invite other show hosts to come on to this show so that they can voice their views, and this also gives them a chance to get more viewers onto their channels as well. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you for participating today, and I'd also like to thank all of the listeners in the listening room. Thank you for sharing your comments on IRC. And as well, I'd like to thank all of the viewers at home listening on YouTube. Please place a comment in the space below. And we're always happy to hear your feedback, and this will also be simulcast on other channels. We will be releasing this under a Creative Commons license, which means you will be permitted to simulcast this video on your blogs and video channels. Please don't edit the content, and always give credit for the author. All right, well, that's all there is for now. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.
Today's show was brought to you by the Linux Distro Community. Visit us today at linuxdistrocommunity.com and chat with us on Mumble or in IRC on the Freenode network in the Linux Distro Community channel. The Linux Distro Community. Freedom through the sharing of